Meeting of the Veterinary Medical Board. Ethan will call roll.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Present.
Dr. Sullivan.
Here.
Dr. Noland.
Here.
Dr. Nunez.
Here.
I thought I saw you. Jennifer Laredo.
Here.
Kathy Bowler.
Here.
Judy Mancuso.
Here.
And Alana is absent.
So we have established a quorum. This is the time for introductions from the public. This is voluntary, but if you would like to introduce yourself.
Dean Grafilo, Department of Consumer Affairs.
And we'll go around the room, and then maybe we would come back to Dean. Do you want to speak? Introduce yourself a little more. Yes.
Sorry, God dang it.
So Dean Grafilo, if you want to introduce yourself a little more, because we're keeping on the agenda then.
Have a rare prop this morning.
And it's so easy.
Yes. Yes. President Waterhouse, Vice President Sullivan, and Interim Executive Officer Mathis, board members. So it's such a pleasure to be able to address the board for my second time now being on board here at DCA. Last time he was back in July of obviously last year. My quick math, I was 4 months into the gig, and it has been an absolute whirlwind these past 14 months. I've been enjoying it tremendously, and again, appreciate you folks giving me the time to quickly address the board. Want to recognize that this is a very special year, as you folks may very well know, for the board, as 2018 marks the 125th year of regulated veterinary medicine in California.
Yay.
Absolutely.
Where's our stickers? Yeah.
I have stickers.
Yeah. Executive Officer Mathis was mentioning the stickers, and I'm looking forward to stickering up after my brief comments here. So naturally, to that end, I wanted to come in person and wish you all a very, very happy birthday and help celebrate over a century of accomplishments. This is an opportune time for the department to appreciate the many positive years of collaboration we've had with you, and to reflect on the timeless contributions that you have made to the California veterinary community. To celebrate, I know board staff has worked with our department's Office of Publications, Design and Editing, and Public Affairs to not only design a new 125th board logo, letterhead, and website, but also publish historical veterinary profession facts throughout this month to share this key milestone with the California public. Naturally, I'm not going to go through each of the noteworthy accomplishments and dates. I was able to look it over previous to coming here today, and one particular item struck my interest, and I'll share it with you folks. In 1909, law passed requiring sheep to be dipped by state veterinarians if owners refused. And I don't know if you folks are very familiar what dipping a sheep is. I suspect many of you may in fact be, but basically
I hope it's not cruel.
well, yes, it's a liquid formulation of an insecticide and fungicide, which shepherds and farmers use to protect their sheep from infestation against external parasites. And again, what struck me, being very familiar with legislative committees, having been staff for various legislators, I could only imagine how the committee proceedings went when sheep owners were, protesting, this notion of state vets coming in and dipping their sheep. I was joking with Patrick Lay coming over here. I could only imagine how that legislative committee hearing would go on, and I would pay to watch that. As you could imagine, too many of those legislative hearings are quite dry, and I could only imagine how enthusiastic that hearing was. Nonetheless, it's an honor to work with you and this board, and as this board continues to serve as a shining example of consumer protection to the rest of the nation. Your work is a testament to the vital role that animals play in our lives and to the importance of practicing safe veterinary medical care. Again, thank you for the work that you do and for your continued partnership. Happy birthday. I'll be more than happy to kind of present this to the president as before I formally close my remarks. I just, again, want to express my deep and sincere appreciation not only for the work you do, but I think it's equally important, the work that we try to partner together in doing. If I recall correctly, my remarks last July, I've said it not only here, but other places. In no way, shape, or form do I have a monopoly on good ideas. And in my experience, true progress and the ability to kind of advance any organization's mission really requires collaboration. And I'm happy with the past 14 months that I've been on board. There's obviously much more work to be done. Looking forward to doing that with all of you. I know you folks have a busy agenda today, so I'm not going to take any more of your time, but I am happy to answer any questions you may have for me. Great. Thank you, and let me just bring this to President
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's our camera?
Thank you very much.
Can we get a picture for the Facebook page? Ethan, you wanna put it on the Facebook, or is somebody here that can post it?
We'll take a picture later.
Okay,
That was very interesting. I read that.
me too.
And the factoids on that are very interesting.
It's in our packet for those
Yeah.
that don't remember.
And
that
and
it's
I can
there.
assure you, our meetings are just as contentious as dipping sheep. Dipping sheep sounds romantic to me.
I can imagine one of the people in that hearing was like, oh, this is slippery slope, telling me to dip my sheet, what are you gonna tell me next?
Thank you, thank you. Okay, so before we move on to my president's report, let's return to item number 3 from the day before of approval of the board meeting minutes in February. I think we've resolved our issue. And so is there a motion to approve?
The minutes?
Mhm.
So moved. I'll second.
Any discussion from the board? Any discussion from the public? I'm gonna call for the vote.
Dr. Waterhouse.
Yes.
Dr. Sullivan.
Yes.
Kathy Bowler.
Yes.
Jennifer Laredo.
Yes.
Judy Mancuso.
Yes.
Dr. Noland. Dr. Nunez.
Yes.
There we go.
Motion passes. So, agenda item number 16, board president report. Let me tell you, I've been busy since our last meeting. It's on. Is it? Okay. On March 9th, the executive committee, which is Dr. Sullivan and I, met to discuss AB 3013, the APR bill, and voted to oppose. A letter was sent to the Assembly Business and Professions Committee to express the many reasons for opposition, and the actual letter was sent on April 2nd. Also on March 9th, I sent a letter to Member Culver's office regarding AB 2215 about our concerns about a lack of data and research for marijuana and our concerns about disciplinary restrictions. On March 22nd, the Executive Committee spoke on the phone and elected to oppose SB 1441, the bill to make it a crime to declaw a cat. We oppose this on the grounds that it should not be a crime and therefore take the regulation out of the realm of the Department of Consumer Affairs. On April 10th, at the Assembly Business and Professions Committee hearing, I testified as to the board's opposed position to AB 3013. Ethan Mathis and Dr. Sullivan were present as well. The bill did pass out of committee. Also on April 10th, I met with Member Kalra's aide, Ryan, with Ethan and Dr. Payton from UC Davis to discuss AB 2215, the marijuana bill. We discussed our concerns about the marijuana dispensary personnel recommending marijuana and therefore practicing medicine, about the need for funds for research, and the question of the quality control of cannabis products. On April 16th, I had a phone conference with Nicole Lay, the head of HR, and Dr. Sullivan and myself to discuss the 6 applicants for the EO position and determine which of the questions we were given from Nicole that we would ask at the screening interviews. It was determined that we would not interview the 6th candidate as he was an associate veterinarian and had no managerial or regulatory experience. And he was also a veterinarian, associate veterinarian. And I believe they passed the law where a licensee cannot be an EO. On April 17th, I was present for the AB 2215 at the Assembly and Business Professions Committee on Marijuana Use in Animals. I reported that we were working with the author. On April 20th, Dr. Sullivan and I met with Nicole Lay, head of HR. Then the two of us interviewed the 4 of the applicants for the EO position. And I attended the Board of Governors meeting at the CVMA on April 21st, and I gave the VMB report. On April 24th, I interviewed the 5th candidate for the EO position. Dr. Sullivan was at the legislature testifying on another matter. Also, a letter was sent to the Assembly Appropriations regarding AB 3013 expressing our opposition. And as I mentioned yesterday, I think the board should consider going back to holding our meetings on January and April instead of February and May. The majority of the ledge bills were not presented until April and they were fast and furious. And if we could meet as a board in early April, then we could address these issues as a board. Also, the AAVSB asked for candidates for office be made by May 17th, so we kind of got left out there too. On May 3rd, I had a phone call with Ann Hawley, the governor's office person for boards and appointments, and she asked about the people up for reappointment. I gave them all solid, good reviews. We discussed the pay for EOs, and we a little bit discussed some ledge bills. On May 14th, I sent a letter to Appropriations Committee regarding AB 2215 to support the efforts of Member Caldwell and to allow veterinarians to discuss marijuana and our concern for research needs. Any questions?
I have one. Can we verify that the law passed that EOs can't be veterinarians? Can someone
Yes.
give us a yes or no on that one? Because that's
know?
just good to know.
Do you know, Tara? And it was,
Off the top of my head.
I definitely remember the talk. I
Yes.
just don't know if
I
it
don't
was
know if it
actually
passed.
done or not. Yeah.
so we can research that one. Any questions from the public?
Cheryl, I have a question.
Yes.
Is that a typical number of applicants for a position like this? Seems low to me, but
I would think it would be low, having done this for the first time.
okay,
And
just
you,
curious.
I remember.
We'll have to- we can
I don't
ask-
know, I don't know what's typical.
we can ask Nicole Lay when she comes.
Yeah.
She's head of HR.
There was more when we interviewed Anne Marie. I think there was. We'll ask her.
What we interviewed.
Well, there was a whole bunch, and there was a subcommittee that went through them and whittled them down. So that's what I remember. But yeah, this was not. And the applicants for yesterday, MDC, that was not good. We need more. Let's hope so.
Tara, should we move on while we wait for?
I can't find any prohibition on hiring a vet for the EO position. It's not in your Practice Act, and so I consulted quickly the administrative manual. It's not there either. There's no prohibition.
That passed.
Okay.
So that didn't really preclude that person if they were a good
He
candidate.
had no managerial experience.
Well,
He had no
forget-
state
okay.
policy
Oh, no.
experience. He was, even without that issue. it
Okay.
was- Yeah.
You might be listening right now.
Could be. So on to agenda item number 17, RVT report from Jennifer.
Okay. First item on my report, Carvta had brought to my attention some concerns they had about the school reporting, and I'm sure Nancy can explain it better than I can, so I'd like to ask Carvta to address the board and explain what those concerns were.
Do we have a handout or no? We're just, oh, there is a handout. Okay, hold on. No, I probably have it. I'll just look for it. Does that look like it? Okay.
Well,
Is
as
that-
you were aware, we've been having a problem getting the statistics from AAVSB on the VTNE results, and we now have July, August, and November, December of 2017, but we've been using the VTNE since June of 2014. Do we have statistics from back then? So we have all the statistics up through here?
Yeah, we have statistics. In fact, we did report those at the regular board meetings until the portal changed with the AAVSB, and then we had a little bit of a difficulty getting statistics by school specific, which is why the delay.
Okay, so we have a regulation that requires all the schools to maintain a pass rate within 10% of the average of first-time test takers. Unfortunately, our regulation says, I better. The regulation says, that the school or degree program shall provide each prospective student prior to enrollment with literature which discloses a school or degree's pass rate for first-time candidates and the state average pass rate for first-time candidates on the board's registered veterinary technician examination during the 2-year period immediately preceding the student's proposed enrollment. That was written when we had one exam. It's not clear from this, and I've asked this question before and gotten a vague answer. What does this mean now that we have 2 examinations? Are we holding them responsible only for the California exam, or are we holding them responsible for the results on the VTNE? And it seems to me that if we're gonna hold them responsible,
Right.
the VTNE is really what we mean, because that's the one that talks about competence. And I reviewed these, I just had these from yesterday, I reviewed these and I went over them. Out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22 schools, 6 schools fell below the 10% pass rate on these 2 exams. And I'm not aware that the board is holding anybody accountable. I'm not clear that this regulation allows us to hold them accountable, but it's certainly our intent. Some of these schools are costing the students a lot of money. And when you have a 30% pass rate, a 0% pass rate, a 25% pass rate, and you've paid $40,000 for that education, that's pretty pathetic.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, Judy.
So I guess the question is, do we have, the answer is yes, jurisdiction to do something about these pass rates to these schools? And that when was the last time that we analyzed the data, sent letters to them and said, hey, why are your rates so low? And if we haven't done it for a long time, then let's do it and put it on some schedule. That would be my recommendation. I mean, I know, being on the board 8 years, we have discussed this before. There has been letters sent out in my recollection, but I don't know that it's been in recent history. And I think that that's a good thing to do, like ASAP. What do you think, Ethan?
Well, no, I don't disagree that we should look at that. The regulation does give us the authority to look into it, not necessarily enact anything, but we can potentially do something about
The
it.
regulation allows the veterinary medical board to put schools on probation.
Right,
As a matter of
right.
fact, requires the school to put the school
A
on
concern of mine
probation.
looking at the data is small sample size.
Yes,
I don't
that's what
think-
Jamie just
I
pointed
don't
out.
think it's necessarily invalid, but the amount of data you collect year over year is it's tiny. There may be three folks taking the exam.
I know, that's what Dr. Nolan just pointed out.
It can make it a difficult proposition,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean we shouldn't look into it. I don't disagree.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt for a letter to go out. What do you think, Dr. Nolan?
Well, I have a question, actually. These are test results that are being recorded from the November, December testing. Is it typical, as it is with veterinary students, for students to take the test first during the middle of their last year and then take it again when they graduate or as they get ready to graduate? It's a fairly typical practice with veterinary students.
Same
No, they're
qualification.
not
No,
allowed
they
to take
can't.
the test.
They
until
can't.
they
Okay, just was
graduate.
curious. Yeah, thank you.
So is that something that staff could address or something that we need to defer to the MDC or what? What should we?
I think staff should be able to handle that.
Okay, so we can say that we'll look into that and maybe
And are
report back.
these statistics, are we going to have the statistics on our on your website?
Well, they're on the school's websites for the national.
Well, theoretically they are. I looked on several schools' websites and couldn't find them. So they may be there, but they're not easy to find. And
I think the schools are having the same problem that you're having and you're having, that
Perhaps.
they're having a hard time getting them out of AAVSB also.
well, I went to several schools, and on Foothill College, it was very easy to find. They had, the AVMA requires them to post a 3-year average. It was very easy to find on the Foothill website. It was not easy to find on everybody else's website, and, which seems to me to be a violation right there, that you shouldn't have to be a computer expert to find something that you don't even know you're looking for. I mean, the whole point of having this is to help students decide whether they want to go to the school in the first place. And they don't know that, which is why our regulation requires that the school be proactive and hand the student the literature, and I'm sure that's not being done either.
Well, as a student, it would certainly be nice to go to the veterinary medical board and look it up. It's just that if we can compile the data and the data has integrity, however, if you're misrepresenting the school because of the small sample, then that's a disservice to the student and the school. So it's a catch-22. If I was a student, I would love to go one source and find all this and pick a school
Yes, and
based on, but I gotta be able to rely on the data.
well, and our regulation requires a 2-year average, not one test, but a 2-year average. So if over 2 years the school is only graduating 1 or 2 students, or 1 or 2 students are taking the exam, there's something wrong with the program in the first place.
So is there any way to get that 2-year average? Because this looks like it's a 1-month average.
Right.
It's
We have statistics going
per
back
period.
to the beginning.
Okay. And then that would find out which of those schools falls below the 10% pass rate.
So, and I know
Kathy,
Ethan's working
is-
with the AAVSB also to get information, so.
Right.
Kathy,
You know, and I was one of the ones that contacted AAVSB about this before, and we got some materials from them, and they explained their change of vendor and the portals, et cetera, et cetera. But there were still some things about the California versus other states. Did we ever get final comparison from him about the California pass rate compared to other states?
Well, no, I didn't have
I
other
don't
states necessarily. Like, I have an aggregate nationwide, but not state by state.
Yeah, they were supposed to
I don't-
get
I don't
us
get that.
something,
I
so.
brought that up at the last meeting because when you look at.
No, I've
Yeah,
asked,
because when we looked at our pass rate, it was shockingly low.
Yeah.
And it's still, when you look at this is 52% seems very low, but then when you look at the average breakdown by school, then you see what's happening. There are schools that are getting 195% pass rate, and then there are other schools that are getting 0. So that brings the average down to the 50s, but it's not representative of what's actually going on in the state. But I think we really have to be on this when you see there's such a disparity between schools, that something's going wrong in some of these schools.
yes. Okay, so
Okay,
Ethan,
so-
maybe you can look at that and report back at the next meeting.
and they did say, I think in this email, they were gonna design a report for California that would give us some better data aggregation, but we haven't received it yet, and they're gonna send it to Ethan. He pointed out the name of the woman who's doing it for AAVSB, so.
Yep.
Jim, yeah.
Thank you, Nancy.
I have another
So-
question for Ethan, actually. Ethan, later on, you're going to report on the California Veterinary Technician Examination results. If you know, there's 3 columns here, January through June of 17, July, December 17, and January, June 18. It seems very consistent with this small amount of data that the students taking the test between January and June, their pass rate is at least 10 to 15% higher. Is that typical? Do you know of past years, or is that something we should look at, or
I'd have to look into past years. I
Yeah,
have
okay.
no
It
idea
just
what that
seems
would
like
be,
there's a-
you know.
pattern there, but,
There's always a summertime graduation thing. I don't know if that matters. You know, but something we could. It's a long-term data analysis, I think.
yeah, okay.
Okay, also, if we remember the VTNE job analysis, since we're talking about the AAVSB, was completed, so the new test blueprint should be rolling out this summer, so students should be taking the new version of the exam starting in July. Also, if we remember from yesterday's meeting, casting and splinting was moved under indirect supervision, so we had been talking about that for a while, so that's very positive move forward. Yay, VMB. And last thing I have is Dr. Sullivan's brought it up because I've been whining about it for a while, but I still do want to see compounding added as an additional RVT-only job task to 2036, so we're hoping to get that on a future agenda. And that's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. You serve about triple load here between serving here and the VMB and doing the RVT report. Agenda item number 18, administrative and the budget report by Ethan.
All right, so you have your report in front of you for
No.
review.
What's it look like? I have a whole stack of
18
paper.
18A, there's a memo with the expenditure.
Oh, it's in the book. I thought it was one of the handouts.
Yeah.
I
back
did
it
read it,
wasn't.
shut up. Look at 18.
So a couple highlights on my report. Since we last met, we did get an increase to our Attorney General OAH augmentation. Similar to last year, it's a mid-year allowance if our costs exceed our appropriation. That was again the case this year, so we requested and were granted that mid-year augmentation to that fee area. The other thing I want to note is fee regulations. The emergency regulations went into effect in March, and those were emergency, so that means there's a 180 effective rate. We continue to work on the full rulemaking file to make those permanent. We anticipate we'll be filing that rulemaking file before the 180-day runs out with OAL. If you have any questions.
And
Yeah,
with
the answer.
regulations taking so long, is that gonna, do you anticipate a problem? Or
No,
they
not at
still
all.
gonna-
No, this is next, but everybody's aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does the interim executive officer go to jail if we go under budget? Or are you exempt from that?
I don't plan on testing that.
Good answer.
Is this where we get to ask you questions about the budget?
Yeah.
Yes,
I was expecting.
Yeah, right.
Dr. Nolan.
Shoot, I should just say, no questions, just to make Ethan happy, but, I noticed that there's no, inspection program funding in the budget, right? I mean, we suspended that, is that correct?
Well, there is inspection funding. It's just a funny way we put it in
Okay.
this particular expenditure report. The cost area is assigned to was out-of-state travel. It's actually
there we
reflected
go.
under CMP external. That's where it lands. It's a
Okay.
little bit of a discrepancy in how that BCP attributed the appropriation.
Okay.
However, yeah, we do have a limit to what we can spend on inspections.
Okay.
It's been an issue throughout the years.
There's going to be a budget change proposal though for that?
Yeah, so one of our committee bill provisions was to mandate 20% inspections. And along with that, we're asking for additional funding to fund that. So yeah,
Okay.
we're expecting additional staff and funding to fund the inspectors.
And then there'll be its separate line item on the
We
budget?
hope so. It's been a wish of ours to kind of clean up this expenditure report. We've moved to fiscal and there's been a few hiccups, so it's a long-term plan to make sure we're just trying to get our expenditure reports right now. So
Okay.
hopefully we can get everything cleaned up once that's a consistent process.
And I have another question.
Yes, Dr. Nunez.
How's Breeze affecting our budget? Are we still being hit by that?
Yeah, we're still paying for it. Everybody's paying their fair share.
More than expected though? More
No,
than,
there's been a clear transparency that what our expected portion of that budget is. Yeah, and it's still reflected in the budget. Absolutely.
And will our expenditures in the future stay about the same as they are now, or are they expected to go down or up?
No, I mean, you always anticipate a little bit of an increase every year. I think we project about 3%, but yeah, it's been pretty stable throughout the years. And with the new fees, it's helped get rid of that structural imbalance we had between revenues and expenditures. So that's been a nice trend that we're going to be seeing, where we'll actually be taking in more money to put in that reserve than we're paying out.
Kathy, did you have a question?
I wanted to clarify, I assume you guys felt like that it was a big increase for the AG budget, but that will be
Yeah.
enough to hold us through.
Yeah,
This-
that was,
the end
yeah,
of this
you
year.
work with the AG's office to
Okay,
make sure the projection's on point, and that's where the appropriation amount comes from.
okay. And then, was there any, and this may not be applicable to the budget, but there was a case where there was some potential costs coming back to the VMB, maybe transferred from the AG for a particular.
Potentially, it's still.
But still not
it's still in the
happened.
works, nothing's been
Okay, so
settled yet.
nothing's
Yeah,
reflected
right.
here.
no.
Okay. All right, I think that was it.
So I have another question for Ethan about, just kind of a clarification, down under the exam expenses, I'm assuming that kind of overage that is on the expert examiners, was that the RVT test preparation or something else?
You
that
know, I noticed that, and I think that might be a factor of fiscal.
okay.
You'll notice in the prior year expenditure column,
Yeah,
our interagency with OPES is not accounted for in that cost area in current fiscal year. I think those expenses have been attributed to the expert examiners. Because you
Okay.
combine the two, it's about the same. And we did have an occupational analysis that did increase those costs this
it didn't seem like it was that much.
or this
so-
fiscal year.
Yeah.
So,
The same thing kind of happens up above in your external CNP services. But if you look to the prior
Right.
year's expenses, it's
Right.
really tracking pretty well, but we just way under budgeted it for
that's
some
again, that's our
reason.
inspectors. Our inspectors are paid out of that cost area.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And then printing, what did we print that cost so much money?
You know, so I was trying to reflect back. I think we did the hospital inspection pamphlets. There
Okay.
was-
Yep.
Something
yeah,
went over, yeah,
That was a
okay.
big cost
Okay.
and a normal cost doing business. Yeah.
And then one more question. I missed the Maximus presentation, right? There was one in February that I missed, I think, or someone came in and talked about it, but about how much does that cost us, that service?
So you encumber about $25,000 a year. The true cost to the board on a yearly basis is about $16,000. It runs about $4,000 per participant. That's something that Dr. Sullivan has asked that we address at a future board meeting, and
Okay.
that's in the plans for August.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Do you want to,
Yeah, I'll just go straight to C.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Ethan will go to his other report.
All right, your report's in front of you, my exam licensing report. Again, I'm going to highlight a couple things. Continue to see a good amount of VACSP permit applications coming in. We do have, as we've noted earlier, the national VT&E statistics. We're able to get those from AAVSB. Thank you, Kathy, for the help there too. As Jennifer noted, the occupation analysis is mostly done. Part of that is not only the report on the comparison between the national and the state exam, it's redeveloping our exam plan. That's expected to be completed sometime in July, and it will be factored into the January RVT exam. And lastly, as Director Dean mentioned, we have the 125 years of VMB. I just want to shout out to our excellent department, publications and design editing department. And also Dr. Grant Miller helped out with some of the statistics. He graded me a great book on some of the history of the VMB. So that was super helpful. We're going to plan on trickling out some information throughout the year on the decades and significant events throughout veterinary medicine in the last 125 years. And if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Kathy?
More of an observation, but it was interesting to see the increase in veterinarian applications in 17 versus 16. It was quite a big jump.
Yeah.
And I wondered
Sure
if
was.
there was is that reciprocity or is that just
Yeah,
more
I
graduates?
can't-
It's just,
I can't say.
the jumped out to me, so to speak, so that's great.
And it's, the applications received, yeah.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public? Shall we go on to the enforcement report from Candace? Agenda item number 18B.
Good morning. You have my report in front of you, so I will dive right in. As has been the case for quite some time now, the workload of the enforcement unit continues to grow. In the third quarter of the 17-18 fiscal year, we've received 287 complaints. And I think at the last meeting, it was reported to you that we're on track to exceed 1,100 complaints for this year, and we hit 1,000 last week. So it looks like we're going to exceed 1,100 this year. The board is currently monitoring a total of 104 active probationers, and there are 12 petitions to revoke pending at the AG's office for issues of noncompliance. What should be added there is not only issues of noncompliance, but those also include complaints where there have been substantiated egregious violations of the Veterinary Medicine Practice Act in the care and treatment of animals. Attached to my report is the statistical report for the 17-18 fiscal year, covering through the third quarter. Couple of things I'd like to point out. I took the opportunity to go back and kind of look at the trend over the last few years. In 12-13, we had approximately 400 complaints that year. So you can see there's a substantial increase there.
What was that again?
In the 12-13 fiscal year, there were approximately 400 complaints.
Wow.
And we're on track for over 1,100 this year.
Do you have
Do you have
any
a
of the other
theory on
years?
why that is?
You do?
Okay, but let's listen to Candace first.
My primary theory on that is because we are much more visible. I've heard it said that because we have extra staff, that's a reason for it.
That's it.
I think that that's true. It is not true in the sense that we have extra staff and we're out there soliciting complaints. So I don't want that to be the impression. But we do have more staff to process the complaints, to answer the telephone, to do the outreach. So the good work that we're doing, news travels fast, and consumers are finding out that there's an avenue for them to seek
Exactly.
if they feel like they've been wronged.
Very well said.
Those-
That's exactly it.
That's my theory.
That's it.
And
Because in the early years, we couldn't do anything, and it was like the
Right.
board laid low because there was no money, so there was no outreach, and then once we made outreach an issue and we had more money and staff, that's when people went, oh, there's a veterinary medical board, you know? So it's everything
Absolutely.
she said.
We still receive calls on a regular basis where complainants indicate, I never knew that you were here.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
So,
Well, I think it's a bad thing that there's 1,100 complaints, but it's also a very good thing that people know we exist and that they have an avenue to, get reconciliation for things. So thank you.
absolutely.
I have another question.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you have 12,000 veterinarians in the state and you're getting 1,100 complaints, then I know it's not 1-to-1, but that's approximately 10% of the veterinary population. Is that high?
In my experience, I don't think that that's high. I think that that's somewhat average across the board for the DCA boards.
The Healing Arts Board.
But I would have to look into it.
And
Candace,
Sure. Isn't there sometimes multiple complaints on one
Yes.
licensee?
Right.
That's what I was gonna
That's-
say.
That
We're
is
doubling
up.
most frequently the case, is that they're
That's
what we call the frequent flyers. They complaints over and over and
Frequent
over.
flyers.
Yeah, I assumed
There
there
are
was
names that become very
frequent flyers,
familiar, and that's unfortunate.
Yes.
but, okay.
Kathy?
I just was gonna say, I agree with everything you said, and I think just in general, probably many more of the boards are getting more complaints in the last few years. It's just more, it's easier to figure out where you go when you wanna complain, generally. our website is good, but I mean, people can figure it out pretty quickly, almost anything on good old Google. But, and also the fact that you guys are responding and can respond and let people know where to go, et cetera, et cetera. That was probably a big holdup too. So, and the other fact is you're getting through the complaints in a really, in a timely manner and fair manner, it seems like. So that's a great, impressive fact.
How about there were several long-standing cases that were in place when you came on board. How, have we resolved all of those, or there's
We
still?
have resolved the vast majority of those. That was also something else that I have here. In the 15-16 fiscal year, resolution of cases that required formal discipline, the average number of days was in excess of 1,200 days. If you'll look at the report for the third quarter, we averaged 566 days in closure of those complaints. So yes, there are still a couple of cases that are pending, that have been in the process, that are older, but the vast majority are all within the timeframe. And the 566 days is actually very close to the performance measure set for the board of 540 days for resolution of those
That's right.
cases. So.
Okay.
And even the 560 is influenced by a couple of those long time lagging ones that are still in process, somewhat.
Perhaps, I'm not
Okay.
entirely sure what
I thought,
the 9 cases that were closed, exactly which ones
Okay.
those were.
Dr. Nolan?
I really appreciate what great work that you and your staff are doing, and I appreciate your insights and what your analysis and theory of what's going on. But I also believe that we have an obligation to the consumer to really look at the data objectively, if we can, and make sure that there are not certain areas or certain types of complaints that are really escalating quickly that we should be addressing from an educational standpoint or whatever. So I know that puts a lot of burden on the staff, and I don't know if we have the time and resources to do that. But I think we ought to really seriously consider looking at the data to analyze whether the increase in complaints have some sort of merit outside of the theory. And also compare, as Dr. Nunez said, compare to other boards to see if we are in line, if there is a general trend, or if we are a standout. Because I thought I read in the packet that we appear to be on a more escalating route than some other boards as far as number of complaints. So I don't have answers to how to actually do that, but I do think it's something we should discuss as a board to really mine that data and look at it a little more carefully for trends that we could address.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that would be a valuable investment.
Is there any trends that you've noticed?
I know, one of the issues that we see over and over and over are issues with medical records. And so in the outreach that we're doing, we're trying to provide education on exactly what's required for medical records, those sorts of things. We're issuing a lot of letters of education to let people know kind of what exactly it is that is required and where they're falling short, as opposed to, taking action on those types of things. The vast majority of cases that I'm seeing come through the discipline process, and those all come to you, involve the more egregious care and treatment cases. There are also a number of statement of issue cases where the individuals have been denied their application for licensure. So all of those factor into these numbers.
We see so many DUIs. Everything seems to be DUI.
All our cases today are drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. I mean, if there's any trend, that's it, and it has been escalating.
Well, and I think that goes back to, as well, I think it's AB 2138, why that's such a dangerous bill.
Say that again?
AB 2138, why that's such a dangerous bill that was
Yes.
discussed yesterday.
Yeah,
Dr.
a lot
Nunez.
of VACSP folks, a lot of VACSP folks that we see. That's
That's it.
primarily.
I mean,
problem, yeah, but-
it's unbelievable how many people.
Dr. Nunez?
When you say medical records violations, do you see a difference between electronic medical records and handwritten medical records? I would assume you would. There's
I don't personally, I don't have that expertise, but our veterinary medical consultants have reported to me that there is a vast difference
That
between.
violations are decreased with electronic medical records?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
That's
Why is it screwed? Screwed.
They're
Skewed.
So going back to the idea of looking at data, would that be a motion, or should we just encourage the staff to try their best to take a look at that? And you would best be able to decide how to do that, I think.
We can take a look at it, yeah, and suss out some trends perhaps.
Yeah, I was
Kathy, do you
gonna
have
chime in on that. I would assume the complaints are tagged by, issue area, geographic, things like that, and whether they're resolved or not, or whether they're, excuse me, there's enough to go on or how. But yeah, it seems like that could all be aggregated into something that could show some basic data. I'd be happy to help staff on it if you guys
Thank
need
you.
it. But
The data is there.
Good.
It would be an enormous undertaking, but like I said, I think it would be worthwhile.
yeah, it just depends on how how it is there. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, I want to, since we're on air, I would like to correct an impression that was left here. I believe we have 7 cases today, and yes, there's drug-related issues to those, but that's out of 12,000 licensees. So
And over 1,000 complaints, so it's.
we have to put it in perspective.
And the complaints are also RVT, I mean, it's across the board, not.
Right, it's everybody.
Jennifer?
Just to play off of the DUI comment, drug and alcohol, I had mentioned this to Ethan yesterday. At some point when the diversion program comes before us, I'd like to ask if it would be possible to have a licensee who has been under probation go into the programs or explain to these students what the actual steps are to being probation, because for DUIs, it's very easy for most of us to just get an Uber or a taxi, but these students who are strapped for money, they're making those decisions. $15, $20 might seem harder than driving themselves home, and they don't think it's a big deal. But for the licensees who have come before us to explain what the actual steps are to being under probation and the monthly fees and the drug testing and taking time off of work, I think that might scare them straight when they're in the position to make those bad decisions, rather than having to deal with the consequences later. So I think at some point, maybe we could have an outreach program that could focus on the students.
I love it. It's gotta happen.
Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Thank you, Candace, you do a great job.
Thank you. Do you want to hear the rest of my report?
Oh, yes, that would be good. Do the rest of your report. I thought you were done.
No, that's okay. Just the staffing portion, actually. As you all know, we've had kind of a struggle with staffing over the last year. We've had at least one vacancy in enforcement since May of last year. We did recently fill the probation monitor position, which actually Sydney Villarreal, who was an analyst in our complaint investigation unit, moved over to that position. So we solved one problem, but now we have to backfill behind her. But that's really working out very well. So I want to thank her for her commitment to this new position. The interviews for the complaint investigation analyst have been conducted, and request for eligibility has been submitted. So my hope is that we'll be making a conditional offer by the end of this month. Another change in staffing was the departure of Christy Bell, which is an associate analyst. She was actually the lead analyst in the enforcement unit, and Christy accepted a position with the department and has moved over, and was actually a promotion for her, a much-deserved promotion. So we're very happy for her, but it does leave a gaping hole in enforcement. So we've advertised for that position. The final filing date for that is May 30th, and so we will be conducting interviews and hoping for a adequate pool of qualified candidates in that way. We also have extended an offer of employment to a retired annuitant. This individual is someone who retired from Contractors License Board, and she was a enforcement supervisor there for many, many years. So I think that she'll be a very valuable asset to the the board. I think that's it. There's always, we're always, we're consistently doing more with less. The increase in workload, the decrease in staff. And I know that we are working with budgets on a budget change proposal in hopes of obtaining authority to bring on more staff. So that's it. Are there any other questions?
Dr. Sullivan?
Just a comment that you kind of brought up that we've been dealing with. I would hope that somehow we can get a message to DCA that that we think it would be a wiser management decision to promote within rather than this way, or I should say, to give raises within to keep people in the same positions that are good than have to, for employees to have to transfer to another unit to get a raise. We lost our EO because of that, and we're losing good staff because of that, and it just seems to be a very poor management program that DCA has. And we can't do that in private business. And I would hope somehow we can get a message to DCA that as a board, we need to have some flexibility on giving raises to keep good people rather than having this constant shift of new employees coming in and hoping that they'll work. This is just a poor way of doing business.
Dr. Nunez?
And I would second that, and it's unfortunate that the DCA director left about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Very
But
unfortunate.
we have a couple guys over there still, so, and I would absolutely reiterate what they have said, and I've talked to Nicole Lay, the head of HR, about this multiple times. I think we're gonna have a comment here.
I think we're in trouble.
There goes my
Poor Chris.
Slide this one over. Thank you. Trade. Thank you very much. Chris Castrillo, Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Services, Department of Consumer Affairs. First of all, Dr. Sullivan, hear your concern. Want to separate out a couple issues that you did bring up, though. With respect to the executive officers, they are exempt appointees. They do have a process to go through in order to receive an exempt position request, any kind of salary increase request that is in some respects unfortunate. It's multi-layered. It's not just within the DCA. It goes to DCA, it goes to CalHR, it goes to Governor's Office, it goes to our umbrella agency, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency. So while I certainly hear your concern, and we've been working with our boards to improve this process, I believe I've reported to this board, and we've addressed this in a number of directors' quarterlies, and a lot of the information that's gone out across the boards that we've been working on a salary study. There's an RFQ on the street to take a look at getting a third party to look at the process for EPRs for our executive officers, take a look across the boards to see at the levels that our boards are at. Does this kind of make sense? So that's kind of what we're doing on the exempt route, and I think that's really kind of within the realm of us. With respect to rank and file staff, I mean, that's, it's CalHR, and there's built-in steps, and so, I just want to make sure we're separating out the exempt officer issue versus the rank and file staff. Yeah.
Tara?
We're getting a little off topic.
Oh,
And thank
blame
you.
it on him. Can Judy ask a question?
No, it's not a question, it's a statement. I just want to, back to what Dick said, is that this is a systemic problem throughout government. This is government, and you see it across the street, well, at the Capitol as well. People have to jump around in order to advance, and it sounds like you're doing good things that maybe to improve it, so yay. So thank you for that.
Dr. Nunez?
I'm sorry, Tara, but I just have to say this. I've been a veterinarian for 25 years. Veterinary medicine is my life. Veterinary medicine is the life for each and every person on this board. It's important to us. It really is. And this is a problem that is affecting the profession that we love. And I hope the DCA knows that.
Understood.
Could I
Are
just add?
you gonna make Tara happy?
No, probably not. I mean, I don't know. No, I was just gonna add that I just think this conversation has been very useful and for a lot of reasons. And we all know there's challenges all the way through the system and there's rules and regulations. But as far as consumers' protection is concerned for a huge state like California, quality staff are so critical to consumer protection all in all. And it's just, we know there's a lot of drags on the government, on the budget, but it would be helpful, and that's what I think you're hearing from this board, that we had some, at least that we could contain and maintain quality staff, because it just helps with our job and the state's job of consumer protection.
Okay, we're done. Candace did a doubly good job.
Tara's hair turns like.
Yeah. Okay, shall we move on to the hospital inspection report? Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, I'm good. Patty Rodriguez, Hospital Inspection Program. You have my report in
Oh,
front of you.
yay, she's still with us.
And unfortunately, we're not gonna meet our 20%. And I think we've known that for a while. We're looking at about 12%. If you're looking at the statistics, the routine inspections that are still pending, those will not be issued this fiscal year. They'll be moved over to next fiscal year. So right now, we're standing at, like I said, 12% is what we'll finish up with this year.
And what's the projection to get to the 20? How long before we're at that place?
We're not going to.
That
Depends on the legislature.
Ever again?
having the mandate in the omnibus bill certainly helps the effort.
Okay,
And then funding follows. So we're working on it.
okay.
So when will you start routine inspections again?
That was a valid question.
After the annual training, which is the first week of August. But technically, we could start in July. So I think we do have some of our seasoned inspectors will be giving them their assignments starting in July.
Right.
So we'll hit the ground running.
Okay, that will be great. I think inspections is one of our main tools that we have to try and move the profession forward. And
Can I ask
Yes,
a
Kathy.
timing question? I think, just to clarify. So, and we haven't, to clarify, haven't been able to do inspections since probably November or something, because we had exceeded our budget by that time, somewhere in
Correct.
there.
Any inspections that were already assigned, they were allowed to do, but we didn't assign any
Any new.
more.
Okay, got it. And then timing-wise, with the legislation pending, then would that necessarily for, if that is passed and signed, then is the next step of BCP to get the additional funding to maintain 20%?
Yeah, you're correct. So there's
That would all go into 19 sometime.
well, because it's a legislative mandate, the BCP process is slightly different.
Oh, a little,
So
okay, got it.
it essentially follows the bill. So there's
Okay,
less delay.
okay. Well,
So
that's
we're hoping
good to know.
to have a resolution sooner. on this
Okay,
one.
thank you.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, just a question in my mind on inspections. I believe a year ago, we reached 19%. So at least a year ago or 2 years ago, I'm not sure which. So what was the biggest difference that on our funding for this year that we ran out of money so quickly?
I'll take that. It was unfortunately funding. It really comes down to dollars and cents, the ability to
Oh.
pay for the program.
So we
And
had
that
to-
was
we had-
a
right.
call from operations
Okay.
to limit
I
the
got it.
inspections. Yeah. That's a big reason, yeah.
That's one of
That's
the
one of our reasons to fund the 20%.
So our priority was the disciplinary cases over the inspection. I got it.
Yes.
Right.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Are we still doing hospital inspections based on complaints?
Absolutely, yes.
Those have not stopped. those will always be funded.
Any other questions? Any questions from the public?
I have one more.
Judy?
Okay, so, the recruitment for the three,
Sorry, recruitment for the 3 vacant inspector positions. Those are already in the budget, right? We can hire if we find people?
Yeah, you can hire them. They're paid on an as-needed basis. So, we want to have a good bank of inspectors. We're recruiting, right?
Right.
If I'm not
Correct.
mistaken.
They're contracted positions, so it's a little.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that
so
shouldn't be a
that's good.
problem.
All right, thank you, and don't leave us, thank you. Don't get recruited away.
Yes, we're in the middle of recruiting right now. We've reached out to CVMA and they include, our little blurb in their email blast that they send out to their members. We post it on Facebook and, it's on our website. And this year we also kind of reached out to those individuals, DBMs, that are in those areas that we're looking for an inspector. So if they had an email address, we sent an email out to them to try to generate an applicant pool. So we'll see how that goes.
Yay, thank you.
Can I ask Patty?
Yes,
I
Kathy?
just, because I can't remember. So the compliance rate, approximately 36% after the initial inspection. Does that mean the initial inspection, then you have 30 days or whatever it is and so only 36% actually do and return all the necessary paperwork and produce that they've made the changes before you have to go back after them again? Is that the 30?
That's correct.
Okay, seems so low.
It is.
Yeah,
But that's been about the average for the last several years. It's about a
that's
third
what I recall.
of the facilities that we inspect will come into compliance within that first 30 days or so.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, I was part of that percentage. Well,
Not the 36, but
Well, because one of my, we had to do a reverse distribution. And that
Of
took me.
controlled drugs.
Of controlled drugs.
Right.
And that took me almost 60 days to get the paperwork done correctly because I'd never done it before. And so that threw me off right there. The rest of the stuff was take a picture and send it in, but.
So what percent of the inspections are in compliance at the time of inspection?
at the time of inspection, a handful every year. We actually point them out, oh my gosh, this one is perfect. It's rare.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed. What percent, for my own inspection, what percent, so a third come into compliance within 30 days, and so the other 2/3 are all those coming into compliance, or do we have some?
Eventually, yes.
So you make sure that they actually all come into a
Mhm.
compliance. Okay.
Now, we're backlogged on that part of it, sending out the preliminary letters, telling them what outstanding issues remain. That part of it, we're delayed in. There's a backlog there.
Okay.
We can't keep up with the inspection reports that come in. But eventually, they do come into compliance. If they don't, then we take the next step into possibly issuing a pre-citation letter.
Okay.
And usually after that letter, then everyone comes into compliance.
And is the backlog a function of staff, lack of needing more staff?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're down a staff person in inspections right now. So now the preliminary letters we haven't touched those because we're down on staff right now. So
Constant problem, huh?
Mhm.
Yes.
yes. So as Candace said, we do what we can with what we have.
Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
Agenda item number 19, Ethan, future agenda items and the next meeting locations and dates.
Okay, so as far as agenda items go, I apologize in advance, the list is long. But before I get to board agenda items, we discussed two potential items to delegate to the MDC for the board's consideration. One of those was the possible regulatory discussion on pet ambulances and also dental radiology standard of care.
So we had a motion yesterday on the dental radiographs. Tara, do we need a motion on the pet ambulances to move it to the MDC? 'Cause we
No,
haven't-
you don't need a motion,
we
you
can
can just assign it.
Just assign it,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so moving on. Some of these items are from February meeting that we already had delegated to August, and they are Diversion Evaluation Committee member appointments. A couple of terms are expiring there. RBT drug compounding, corporate practice of veterinary medicine, DEA facility license discussion, reviewing the board admin procedures manual, the OPS report on the RBT national exam study will be on the August agenda, and reviewing the diversion program Maximus fiscal impact on the board. Continuing on from this meeting, we're going to report back on legislation. We're going, we don't need to do the meeting minutes, we did that. There will be a possible national drug compounding policy update, and we'll update on rodeo reporting to date. And we'll look at RVT average pass rates over history. And that's what I have. Is there anything else?
Dr. Sullivan?
Yes, we should have, I think the MDC has moved forward the minimum standards for premises.
Yeah, you're right. That will be also on the agenda. Thank you.
And do we need to add the, do we want the MDC to look at the data on the increase in complaints, or do you want to just do that in-house? Or you want to agendize it?
I'd like to take a stab at in-house and find out where we're at.
Dr. Nunez?
I'd like to evaluate the terms of the MDC members so that we don't lose 4 at once.
Yeah, I think that would fall under the admin procedures manual, where we have a couple outstanding
Yeah.
issues, and so we're gonna open that book up literally and look at some of the things in there where that we would provide guidance
Okay.
on those terms.
Okay.
Dr. Sullivan?
Would that also be the place that we would describe or lay out the regulations for voting for MDC members or for the board?
Yep. That's correct.
Okay.
And
Oh.
if
Was that
they,
an issue?
and possibly if reappointment to the board, there should be a
Yeah,
delay. in mid-
the whole process
yes,
for
okay.
appointing and reappointing
Judy.
MDC members.
I'd like to suggest Orange County for the next meeting, please, for those of us in Southern California, or is there
Yeah.
no
Concern with
money?
the board.
And as far as location, I think it would behoove us to consider Sacramento for August. We'll have new leadership. I think it's important we're here. There's
Oh.
still a fiscal concern. If you look at our monthly expenditure report, we're still
Okay.
running
Cheaper to have it
pretty,
here.
pretty lean. I think it'd be a wise decision.
Okay, back to Sacramento.
The August and November dates are set. We're just talking about moving the January next 2019.
Yes, as far
January.
as calendar year 2018, we're set for August, November.
Okay.
And we're actually looking to potentially move the MDC meeting, only an MDC meeting, to a week prior due to some potential quorum issues. So I'll be sending an email out
For-
to
For both
MDC.
August and November?
August.
For August,
Yeah, August only.
just for the MDC,
Okay.
MDC only,
Move it to when?
the week earlier,
the week earlier.
just for the MDC.
We want to make sure we have a full MDC.
Okay, but these dates we can put in our calendar still.
Yes.
Okay.
Jennifer?
I don't want to be presumptuous, but if I am continuing to be the RVT member on the board, I have a scheduling conflict and I can't be at this August meeting, and there are a lot of RVT issues. So if we run into too many issues, I'd like to request some of the RVT issues be pushed to the November agenda if possible.
You're talking about the MDC. Oh, board meeting, okay.
Board meeting.
And Jet, you're the only RVT on the board, so it's gonna be you.
So did we decide the November meeting location yet, or are we?
Sacramento.
They're both in
Sacramento.
Sacramento, August and November. Okay.
That's the recommendation of
I
Ethan.
would- yeah. Yes, I would recommend that.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, that-
Any comments
Yeah.
from the public on
I agree.
agenda items
Look at now, that way.
or
Mhm.
location? Can you come forward?
Just want to confirm the MDC meeting will be moved to the 21st of August?
Well, tentatively, I want to make sure that everybody's on board. We didn't have a chance to talk to everybody in the MDC, but that's going to be resolved hopefully shortly, and it'll be updated on the website.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Nothing from the public?
Wait.
Yes, okay, Judy.
It says, future agenda items and next meeting, November 21st to 22nd. My calendar says the 22nd is Thanksgiving.
I think it was actually the week before that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was good.
It is Thanksgiving.
Very good catch.
I'm putting it in my phone. I'm like, wait, whoa, what? What do I have on the 22nd? I click on it, it says Thanksgiving Day.
Probably not going to work.
Yeah, 15.
That's
what I have.
I don't know how that-
So this
Okay,
is the
that's what I
location.
have on my phone, 14th, 15th,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
a long time ago, yeah.
Sorry about that.
So I guess we just need to fix that. Okay.
Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome. I'm good for something once in a while.
Or else I'd have to be cooking a turkey here. I don't know.
So it's 14 and 15 with the MDC on the 7th
On November.
or November?
Wait a second.
NBC November 13th. The 29th is in question, or 28th.
August that.
Just
Wait. But August 29th and 30th is good, right? We
Yes.
put that
Yes.
one in. That's not changing for us. Okay.
Can I motion that we recess or
So let's go into,
closed session?
let's take a break. When we come back, we'll be in closed session. Is that okay, Tara, to say it that way? When we come back, we'll be in closed session.
Yes, that works.
Wait a minute.
But also, we'll need to reconvene after closed session
Yes.
to report back on the executive officer, any action that may have occurred during the closed session.
Okay, so let's take a break until 10:30. So we're returning to open session, and during closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 11126A1, the board selected a candidate for the executive officer position. That's what I'm supposed to read. And I believe that, Tara, that we're all done. And so now we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. We are adjourned until our meeting in August. Thank you all. And especially thank you to Ethan.